Hello, welcome to my video 111 on the currently owned by IBM SysML UML2 tool called Rhapsody. I've been testing Rhapsody 10 with one of my open source profiles called the Executable MBSE Profile. There's still life in the old dog perhaps, and that's not just the tool. This is Rhapsody 10.03, which was released in April 2026. As you can see, Rhapsody 10 has a new Visual Studio dockable Windows-style user interface. As you can see, most of it works fine, but I did find an issue with my new term activity diagram called textual activity. When I draw a control flow, it wants transition in the aggregates list for the diagram stereotype. This stereotype is in the profile. Most things in Rhapsody are controllable through properties. There's thousands of them, but these are the overridden properties for my profile's textual activity stereotype. The profile itself is read-only here, as it's been copied into the profiles folder, so it can be added by reference to multiple models. One of the great things about Rhapsody is its upward compatibility and also the stability of its Java API for writing plugins. Hence, in this video I'm going to walk through some of the steps I've taken to update the profile. This will also highlight its open source nature, it's in GitHub, and part of an assembly profile called the SysMLHelper. Now, a nuance here is that the Rhapsody version I'm using to maintain the profile's format is 8.3.1, as this was a highly stable version of Rhapsody after it moved to an XML-based file format for storing units. This means that the profile's format can be read by multiple versions of Rhapsody, 8.3.1 and above. I'm actually cloning the GitHub profile directly into my profiles folder of my 8.3.1 installation. The share folder in 8.3.1 is stored in a read-write location. In this case, my program data folder, as I install Rhapsody for all users. I'll start by launching Rhapsody 8.3.1 then. Although this is Windows 11, I was still able to make it work, although there were a few compatibility warnings during installation. It doesn't really matter too much which edition I launch here, so I'll launch the Designer edition of Rhapsody. I get the usual animation won't work warning, as I also have Rhapsody 10 open, but that's not an issue. The Executable MBSE profile is managed by a combination of a profile, stored in a Rhapsody project, and a Java plugin developed using the free Eclipse IDE Java development environment. I'll start by opening the project that has the profile in it therefore, as this is in my Rhapsody 8.3.1 profiles folder I just did the clone of the GitHub repository into. Now, the interesting thing about the Executable MBSE profile is that it has a lot of new term stereotypes, and also a lot of properties that need to be kept consistent. Hence I moved to using a metamodel with a self-built Java helper to do this. The project is therefore bigger than you think. With it now open, you can see that this is the same unit that was added by reference to my test project. Here's the new term stereotype textual activity that controls the toolbars for my activity diagram, and the aggregates property that I want to update to contain the transition meta class. So I'm not going to edit it directly. What I found when developing SysML language extensions using new term stereotypes is the larger the profile, the harder it is to maintain all the property value settings. Initially, I moved to using Excel, but then that got even harder, so I moved to using a metamodel created in Rhapsody. And I wrote a Java helper that reads the UML metamodel and updates all the property values for the associated stereotypes. Composition is used to model ownership in the browser and the add new menus, and aggregation is used to model the drawing toolbar lists. And I also use dependencies with stereotypes to set other properties such as the target and source lists for the new term relation types. Currently, as I don't customize any drawing toolbars with transitions on them, they're not in the meta model. Default transitions are, however, so what I'll do is clone this to create a transition meta class. If I then drag it onto a diagram and establish a directed composition to it, then this will cause it to be added to the aggregates list of the owner. I'll do a similar thing for the call operation activity new term diagram type. The metamodeling profile and its associated Java plugin for updating the properties are included in the SysMLHelper bundle we downloaded from GitHub. Rather than run the property render from a right-click menu, I chose to do it from a table renderer. So when I double-click this table, the Java runs to query the profile metamodel and update all the properties in the stereotypes that are pointed to from the metamodel. If I inspect the property setting, then I can see the comma-separated list now includes transition. I usually look at my working tree differences in Git. Although you wouldn't normally edit the XML files directly, it's a good way of understanding the changes. I could then do some testing. What I'm going to do is to copy the profile into my profiles folder of my 10.03 Rhapsody installation. I've got Rhapsody 10 closed and hence it won't have a lock on the unit, so I'll delete the old folder and paste in the new version. I would need admin rights to do this with version 10 as I'm putting it in the profiles rather than user profiles. I'll then launch Rhapsody and open the project that I used to show the issue initially. Here I can see that the issue is fixed. I'll also do some updates to the version numbering in the helper so that I can release a new version with a new timestamp. As you can see, the source code is present in the SysMLHelper package, and I can import the project into an Eclipse workspace. To get the project to compile, I'm just going to fix the build properties so they point to a Rhapsody jar file. I'll also fix the native library folder configuration location. There are some other problems here, however, but they're expected. I have some CSV example import code that uses the Apache POI library, but it's not used, however. The Executable MBSE and metamodeling profile do not use or require any third-party jar files. This is partly for security and distribution reasons. This bit is slightly clunky. I recognise there may be better ways of doing it, but I'll show you what I do anyway. I'm going to create a 4.3i release. I use a correspondingly named text file in the profile, both as a version marker file and a changelog. Hence I've changed its name. As you can see, the SysMLHelper profile is now over 10 years old. Hence there's a lot of development here, but also a lot of iterative changes. This change is going to be change 874, hence I'll add it to the log here and give it a short description. There's also a few configuration files to update. In the profile itself, I also use tags on this profile info stereotype to record both the version and timestamp information. This is used by the Java code to compare with tag information stored in models that use the profile, so that users who open up a project created with a newer version of the profile are warned to upgrade. Okay, so I've now updated the profile. I'll just do a final test to make sure that the version info is appearing correctly when I open up a project that was created with an earlier version of the profile. Here we can see that the plugin has given some information in the output window to tell me that I might want to run the setup project properties command to apply some updates to the project. When you run it, you can see that the tags on the project are updated to align with the tag values in the profile. If users open this project and have an earlier version of the profile, then we get a warning in the output window telling them also upgrade. I'll just do a final sanity check that the fix I applied is still working. I'll then commit and push the change to GitHub. I'll use the change line number and comment in the commit. If I go back to GitHub, we can see that change comments have come through. Periodically, I'd then create a new release. This may not be the use of all the GitHub features, but it does the job for me as a single developer. Anyway, hope that helps. If anybody has any questions, let me know. Thank you very much.